Good morning, everyone. I'm Tom Schatz, president of Citizens Against Government Waste, and welcome to the 2016 Congressional Pig Book Press Conference. The 2016 Congressional Pig Book shows that pork is alive and well in Washington, D.C. Compared to fiscal year 2015, the number of earmarks increased from 105 to 123, or 17%, and the cost rose from $4.2 billion to $5.1 billion, or 21.4%. While the increased cost over 1 year is disconcerting, there was an 89% increase from the $2.7 billion in 2014, which is downright disturbing. Even though the cost of earmarks hasn't reached the $29 billion record in 2006, the trend is in the wrong direction. While there are no earmarks for an indoor rainforest or a teapot museum, there are some troubling expenditures. For example, $13,064,000 was earmarked for the Delta Regional Authority, a 335% increase over the average level of previous earmarks. The funding was divided between the agriculture and energy and water bills. The $13 million in earmarks was only $2 million less than the total $15 million appropriation for the agency in 2015, and that $15 million included a $3 million earmark. There was $25 million earmarked for the Star-Based Youth Program through the Department of Defense. It teaches science, technology, education, and math, or STEM, to at-risk youth in and around military facilities. In 2012, the Government Accountability Office found more than 209 duplicative and overlapping STEM programs throughout the federal government, and that number has been reduced since then. However, Congress has earmarked a total of $80 million for the Star-Based program during that same period of time. As in fiscal year 2015, $20 million was earmarked in the Defense Appropriations Bill for alternative energy research, bringing the total to 26 earmarks worth $174.9 million for something that the Department of Energy should be and is doing. While the $40 million earmark to upgrade the M1 Abrams tank was $80 million less than the $120 million earmark in 2015, Congress still continues to push this project despite continued opposition from the Pentagon. One of the reasons for their concern is that there are more than 2,000 M1s parked in the California desert, and the Pentagon would rather create new tanks than upgrade the M1. The $3.3 billion in defense earmarks constitutes 64% of the total in 2016, as opposed to 54.8% in 2015. The $1 billion increase was due primarily to a $1 billion earmark for the DDG-51 destroyer and a $225 million earmark for two F-35 Joint Strike Fighter aircraft for the Navy. The DDG-51 has a long history of earmarks, and the acquisition misadventures of the F-35 are well known. The Maritime Guaranteed Loan Program, a long-standing example of corporate welfare, received a $5 million earmark in fiscal year 2016. Since the mid-1980s, there have been more than 140 loan defaults in this program worth more than $1.5 billion, the most infamous of which cost taxpayers $138 million for two ferries intended to be used in Hawaii that sat unused in Norfolk, Virginia in 2009. To compound the cost of this boondoggle, the Navy bought the ferries for $35 million in 2012. There are earmarks in fiscal year 2016 that involve similar amounts of money as past earmarks, but with fewer details. The 15 earmarks worth $549.6 million for the Army Corps of Engineers correspond to 482 earmarks costing $541.7 million in fiscal year 2010. The difference is that in 2010, the names of the members of Congress and the location of the earmarks were required to be added to the appropriations bills under the transparency rules. That is not the case in 2016. After 5 years on the wagon, at least according to Congress's own definition, it is clear that many members, present company excluded of course, need to once again start drinking at the trough. A permanent earmark ban must be adopted, otherwise taxpayers will be justified in thinking that there will continue to be earmarks and members will use various methods to skirt the moratorium. As in previous years, all the items in the Congressional Pig Book meet all 7 of our criteria, which are all included in the Pig Book. In addition, a project or program also had to appear in prior Pig Books. Therefore, the cost and number of earmarks for fiscal year 2016 is quite conservative. And very timely, I am pleased to be joined by Senator John McCain, who has been at every possible pig book press conference for the past 20 years. And he was the first and most vocal opponent of earmarks, and without him, there would not be a moratorium on earmarks. We're also joined by Senator Jeff Flake, who has been here both as a senator and representative for more than 15 years. And in 2006, at the height of earmarking, he offered every single amendment to cut an individual earmark on the floor of the House. Also, we want to thank Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa for joining us. She has followed up on her wonderful pig ad in her campaign by co-sponsoring a bill to permanently ban earmarks. And we have two first-time participants in this event, the House Republican Study Committee Chairman Bill Flores of Texas, who was such a stalwart proponent of cutting wasteful spending that he once sponsored a bill to establish a national park in his district, but did not add any funding. I also want to thank Congressman Mick Mulvaney, who has always opposed pork barrel spending, as evidenced by his being the lead co-sponsor of a bill to permanently ban earmarks. Thanks, as always, to CAGW Research Director Sean Kennedy and Media Director Curtis Kalin for wading through the appropriations bills and unearthing the pork. Thanks to the Phoenix Park Hotel for once again accommodating our event. And thank you to Holly Torres for bringing Faye, the ambassador from the Pig Placement Network, and of course, our very own Pigfoot. With that, Senator McCain.
Well, thank you, Tom, and I'm glad to be joined by my colleagues, including the distinguished senator from Iowa who made certain activities concerning pigs famous throughout the world. So, giving new meaning to the word of cutting pork. But anyway, and my other colleagues, and my dear friend Jeff Flake, who stood up at a time when it was not the most popular thing to do, and as well as all of my colleagues who are here. And Tom, thank you for your many years of alerting the American people to the waste and mismanagement and sometimes even fraud that goes on. And I believe that one of the reasons why we see the rise of outside candidates for President of the United States is because the American people still don't believe that we have made sufficient progress in eliminating waste and corruption here in Washington, D.C. The waste that's highlighted in this year's pig book, I will not waste much time on, but I would like to mention one that has a direct to do with defense spending. As we all know, there's an authorization process and there's an appropriations process. And unfortunately, because it's the Willie Sutton syndrome in defense that where a lot of the waste and pork resides in the defense appropriations bills. $160 million for Army Humvees, even though the Army requested $0. Additional $7 million in funding for the M240 machine gun, almost 5 times the previous size of the program. The Army has expressed zero need. $225 million for a joint high-speed vessel, which is made in Alabama, which was put in by Senator Shelby of Alabama, which the Navy neither needs nor want. That's the second vessel, not the first, but the second vessel of $225 million. That comes up to $450 million. And anybody who knows anything about shipbuilding, the cost of building is just the beginning. Then you have to man it, then you have to operate it, and you have to provide it. It's a continuing expense. And the senator from Alabama put in, for the second year, a $225 million vessel, which the Navy neither needs nor want. $2 billion in funding, $1.2 billion on top of $1 billion for, quote, medical research. None of us are opposed to medical research. I am opposed to medical research funding being put on defense bill. It belongs on Health and Human Services. It does not belong on the defense appropriations bill. And then, of course, there's one of their favorite, is a $1.2 billion for, quote, medical research, as well as my all-time favorite, which remains my all-time favorite, is the Catfish Inspection Office. And I thank you for highlighting it every year. It's only $15 million a year for a totally unnecessary, unwanted, unneeded catfish inspection office. So when sometimes we look at the progress we've made, and then don't forget the $15 million a year catfish office, inspection office. Thank you, Tom.
Well, thank you. You know, when the cherry blossoms come and spring comes in D.C., the pig book is not far behind. And so I want to thank CAGW for continuing this and staying on this beat. You know, when we got the earmark moratorium, everybody assumed that it was done, that it would remain, and that there wouldn't be earmarks on the margins. And CAGW does such a great job of explaining that we still need to be ever vigilant, and that there are still things that pop up here. So thank you, Tom. Thank you, Senator McCain, for being at this for so long and so effectively. I've seen Senator McCain stand up time and time again among our colleagues and decry this kind of spending. It takes guts to do that, let me tell you, but he does it continually. And thank you to the rest of you for being behind this effort. I'll just mention just a couple from the pig book. One that we've gone after again and again, $5.9 million earmark for the East-West Center in Hawaii. This is something that the State Department has said that they don't want time and time again, yet it still continues. One thing about earmarks is even if you have the earmark just for a couple of years and then it goes away, it often continues funding. There's one that we keep highlighting in our office, and it won our egregious 8 Final Four, our tournament selection in terms of bad spending, was the rapid bus system, the transit system in Colorado near Aspen. I don't think the folks in Aspen are necessarily in need that much of a rapid bus system, but there's a dinosaur-themed bus system that received, I think, $34 million this year, and it continues. It's an old earmark that is now gone, but the funding continues every year, and we see this again and again across the spectrum. So thank you, CAGW, and everybody who's here for continuing to work on this project, and I plan to study the pig book and see where we can cut. Thanks.
Oh, it's great to be back again this year, and I do want to thank our friends with Citizens Against Government Waste and our colleagues here today. Pigfoot, so nice to see you again. Thank you very much. That's right. we'll keep our distance this morning. But I just want to again say thank you to Citizens Against Government Waste for their commitment to holding Washington more accountable for the out-of-control pork barrel spending. It's important that we do that. And as many of you know, I was sent to Congress with a very specific mission, and that was to cut wasteful spending and make Washington squeal. And we are continuing to do that this year. We are currently more than, and I don't need to tell all of you this, but we are currently more than $19 trillion in debt. And that means that every Iowan's share of that debt is about $59,000 or better. And for many Iowans, that amount could mean a college education at a public university in Iowa. And a family of four in Iowa could buy 5 years' worth of groceries, 5 years' worth of groceries with that same amount of money. Or, in my case, or in my father's case, a farmer could use that money to raise an additional 400 pigs, helping our agricultural economy for Iowans across the state. Yes, Pigfoot, you're welcome anytime. Come on up to Iowa. Rather than using those hard-earned dollars for education, for food, or for agricultural needs, Iowans are forced to pay for Washington's reckless spending year after year. And today sheds light on some of these reckless habits and frivolous spending that crowds out funding for crucial programs or shifts the focus off of the real priorities of American families. And I take seriously the responsibility and commitment to ensure taxpayer dollars are spent carefully and efficiently, which is why I have worked to introduce legislation like the Presidential Perks Reform Bill. Taxpayers simply should not be subsidizing former presidents' bills to the tune of millions of dollars. And again, I want to thank you for having me here today. We must cut this out-of-control spending and ensure that spending constraints are in place if we are ever going to get our debt under control. So thanks again. Thank you very much, Tom. Pleasure to be here with you. Thanks to my colleagues as well. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Well, good morning. It's great to be here for my first chance to visit with the Pig Book rollout, or be part of the Pig Book rollout. I want to thank Tom and Bill and all of the CAGW team for all of the great work that you do to expose the excesses in Washington. They should be commended for their continuous work highlighting the most ridiculous, the most absurd, and the most wasteful examples of government excess. Their annual Pig Book has become a conservative staple each year. It serves an important function, and that's detailing just where taxpayer money is going and where it should often not be going. This year's Pig Book identifies 126 tacked-on programs, which cost the taxpayers more than $5 billion this year. Now, of course, this is down from where we were 10 years ago at $29 billion, but the trend is obviously headed in the wrong direction. And Washington, too often, as all of our colleagues up here have said so far, pays lip service to dealing with excess spending in Washington, but it has been fairly ineffective in cutting those same programs. And we in the Republican Study Committee, like our friends at CAGW, soundly reject that claim. Each year we draft our own conservative budget, which demonstrates it's possible to tackle the real drivers of our government's debt. This year the Republican Study Committee has rolled out the Blueprint for a Balanced Budget version 2.0. It balances in 8 years. It reduces spending by $8.6 trillion over the next 10 years. It contains numerous bold reforms to strengthen our national defense, address our social safety net issues, and also spur economic growth, all while eliminating wasteful and redundant spending. I even lost a member over one of the pieces of spending that we cut out in the R-S.C. The initiatives like the R-S.C. budget and the Pig Book are important because they show the path to a healthier, limited government, which many claim don't exist or can't exist. And no one who reads this year's Pig Book can say that there's nowhere left to cut federal spending. How about that, Bigfoot? So, as conservatives, we talk a lot about the need to reduce federal spending and to get our nation back on track. We believe that fiscal responsibility is vital to the health and longevity of our country, but we also know that talk is not enough. The power of the purse lies with Congress, and if we're going to tighten the purse strings, Congress has got to act and act aggressively. That is why the Republican Study Committee has been working tirelessly to push our House budget over the last few years to the right, and we took an official position this year on the budget deal that was cut last October. We are continuing to hold firm to that position, and we are continuing to work toward that goal. If we're serious about keeping our promises to our nation's future generations, we've got to get our spending under control. The 2016 Pig Book and the work of the Citizens Against Government Waste are helpful in taking us that direction. So thank you, Tom, for your inviting me today.
Congressman.
I have spoken in some really tough rooms. I've never spoken in a room where the pig fell asleep. Pig in the back just fell asleep. So I'm sure that's not a reflection on us. At least I hope that it's not. Thanks for having me here. Thanks to Tom for the invite and for Citizens Against Government Waste for what they do. What have we learned? We've learned a couple of things from the Pig Book. And the number one is that when Bill and I got here in 2011, we thought this problem went away. In fact, Flake had been working on this for a long time before we got here, and as a result of the class of 2010 coming in January 2011, we thought we had been able to fix this. Three things. Number one, the Pig Book makes it very clear that we haven't. Okay? The old system is alive and well. Two things that are not in the Pig Book. Number one, the pressure is still on to reinstate the old system. Okay? We hear about it every single year during our organizational time period. There's a group of mostly appropriators who want to bring back the old-fashioned earmarks because they think that's the grease by which Washington works. If you want to start passing bills, just bring us back the old earmarks and we can start buying and selling votes again, and the system will work. We need to continue to push back against that and not lose the ground that we have gained. Lastly, number 3, there's a new type of earmark out here. It doesn't get a lot of attention, but it's something that we need to keep our attention on, which is the must-pass legislation. Spending that gets attached to other pieces of legislation that otherwise wouldn't see the light of day. My favorite example goes back to Hurricane Sandy, a very important piece of legislation to help a bunch of people in need that ended up having spending on it in Alaska and North Carolina and all over the rest of the country, just so that we could buy votes and just so that it could go along with a must-pass piece of legislation. That system is also alive and well. In many ways, that system is actually worse than the old-fashioned earmark. The defenders of earmarks will tell you that, well, it doesn't really make that big of a difference because it's not really spending new money. It's simply taking money that would have been spent anyway and spending it over here. Agree or disagree with that, there is no argument that this must-pass piece of legislation, the spending that gets attached to it, is purely new spending. So in many ways, it's even worse than the old system. Things are getting a little bit better, thanks in part to the work of the folks at CAGW, but we are a long way from being done, and I applaud them for trying to keep this issue at the forefront. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Any questions? You all think we should all eliminate all the earmarks, so I think we're done. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thanks.